Don't mind the band. We're making tofu today.
So we're going to start by cutting off one side, one corner of the top, the other corner of the top edge. Then we're going to cut across the top so that we can open up the flaps. This part is optional, but I like to cut off the side flaps so that it rests nicely on the cutting board. From there we cut off the corners. You don't have to do both, it's just to let some air into the bottom so that the tofu pushes out a bit.
It helps the speaker lead his audience into the scene he describes by creating an
From here we're going to go ahead and pat the tofu dry. This is silken tofu, so it tends to be very moist. If we don't pat it dry, it'll be difficult for the cornstarch to stick directly to it, otherwise it'll just create clumps inside of our bowl, which we'll get to later. Now I'm just cutting the tofu into pieces about 1 inch by half inch by half inch. You can make them larger or smaller based on preference. I know that we like them a little bit smaller, more like bite-sized pretzels. So here's how I do it. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the top part, save that later for garnishing. Cut off the bottom part, those roots, we don't really like to eat them. This middle part is what I'm going to use. I'm going to cook the corn oil with some of this so that we get some of the onion flavor in our tofu. Here I'm adding about 1 cup of cornstarch into a bowl using a fork. It's probably better with a spoon. I use a fork so I can whisk it. About a tablespoon of paprika, equal amount of garlic powder. I just do about a pinch of cayenne pepper or red pepper. This is optional. And then the same amount of ginger, just about a pinch. Then I'm adding in probably a teaspoon of salt. You can do more or less based on whether or not you want it to be salty. I did less because I'm adding a sauce. Then we're just doing about like half a teaspoon of black pepper. Make sure you stir it all together so it's well combined. Then I'm pouring in my corn oil so that it just has about of a 1/4 inch thick layer on the bottom. And here we have our ingredients all set up with the oil scallions separated from the garnished scallions. Here you can see my oil is heating up, and over there I have a landing plate with paper towel for the tofu when it's done. I'm going to add in the onions, cook until fragrant, just so that we can give the oil some sort of flavor so that it kicks in a little bit more into the tofu. I make sure to scoop out the scallions before putting in the tofu because otherwise they will burn. Here I'm showing my 2 types of chopsticks. I use the shorter chopsticks for stirring together the tofu. You could use regular chopsticks for this, but I like to use the long chopsticks so I can place them in the oil without worrying about getting burned. The reason we use corn oil is because it can go up to higher temperatures without sparking as much. It won't burn you as much. Again, I'm using the shorter chopsticks to put the tofu into the pan itself. We're going to repeat this process all the way until the bottom of the pan is covered with tofu, just so that I can get as much in the batch as possible. It's kind of hard to get that many in at the same time. Once they've been cooking for a while, I'm going to flip them over. You can see me doing it manually with the flip of a wrist, but I kind of also occasionally flick it with the chopsticks, which is good to have a wok because it can bounce off the edges. When you see me taking out the tofu, which will be in just a sec, try to listen for the loud sound of it clinking against the ceramic. After so and so many batches, you'll usually get a cornstarch layer that starts to float to the top. To keep it from sticking to the tofu, I tend to scrape it out and put it into a ceramic bowl. Also, if you forget to flip the tofu, it'll usually pop out, so make sure that you're watching them and flip it early. Now I'm just kind of scooping out some oil into a ceramic bowl that I didn't have all of the scraps in, and I'm saving this later for the sauce.
I need to know like.
I mean, I liked it. It's good. I don't have much else beyond that, really.
Okay. Dijon, mustard, garlic, ginger, a little bit of oil with the scallions.